Let's begin by picturing a wooden chair in your mind. Imagine it standing alone against a plain, neutral background, perhaps a soft gray wall or an empty space. It's a simple design, four straight legs, a flat square seat, and a basic backrest. The wood is a warm brown, like the color of toasted oak, with a smooth, polished surface that reflects just a hint of light. Take a moment to see it clearly. Its shape is sturdy, grounded, perfectly ordinary. Focus on the outline, the sharp, clean angles where the legs meet the seat, the upright backrest rising like a quiet sentinel. Now, let's add a little more. The wood isn't perfectly uniform. There are faint grain lines running vertically along each leg, like delicate threads woven into the surface. They're subtle, a natural pattern, slightly darker than the rest of the wood. Picture the seat. It's not flawless either. There's a small nick on the right front corner, a shallow dent where something might have bumped it long ago. The backrest has two horizontal slats, simple bars of wood, evenly spaced, connecting the upright supports. Feel the chair's presence in your mind, solid and real. Take a deeper look. The legs aren't identical. Zoom in on the front left one. It has a tiny knot in the wood, a circular imperfection about the size of a pea, darker and textured, embedded near the base. The seat's edges are slightly rounded from wear, softening the square shape. Imagine running your fingers along it in your mind, smooth, but with a faint warmth from the wood. The backrest slats have their own character. The top one has a thin scratch running diagonally, barely noticeable unless you focus, while the bottom one is pristine, untouched. Picture the light hitting the chair. Soft shadows form under the seat, pooling slightly where the legs meet the floor. Now let's enrich it further. The chair isn't new, it's been used. There's a subtle creak in your mind as you imagine someone sitting on it, a whisper of sound from the joints. The wood carries a faint scent, earthy, like sawdust and varnish mixed together, lingering from its creation. Zoom in on the backrest's upright supports. One has a hairline crack, a splintered line running upward for an inch. The seat has a small stain near the back left corner, maybe coffee or ink, a faded brown circle no bigger than a dime. Picture the texture under your fingertips, mostly smooth, but with tiny ridges where the grain rises, especially along the legs. See the light shift as if a window is nearby. Golden streaks dance across the wood, highlighting every mark and curve. Finally, let's dive into the smallest details. The chair's legs meet the floor unevenly. One, the back right, is a fraction shorter, making it wobble just slightly in your imagination. Each leg has a faint ring of dust gathered at its base, a thin gray line where it's rested too long. The seat's underside, tilt your mind's eye to see it, has rougher wood, unpolished, with a few stray splinters and a carved initial, JH, in shaky letters. The backrest slats have edges worn smooth from hands gripping them over years. Picture a single loose screw in the joint where the backrest meets the seat, tiny, rusted, barely holding. Imagine the weight of the chair, solid, maybe 15 pounds, heavy enough to feel rooted. Hear the faint groan of the wood as it settles, see the microscopic cracks in the varnish along the edges, smell the history in its fibers. Now, let's rotate the chair. Begin slowly. Turn it to the right. Watch the front legs shift, the nick on the seat sliding out of view, the backrest tilting to reveal its side profile. The grain lines stretch and curve in the light as the chair moves. Keep it turning. The back legs come into focus, the wobbly one catching your eye, the stain on the seat disappearing behind the slats. The side view shows the thickness of the wood, the depth of the seat, the way the backrest aligns with the legs. The light shifts with every inch, shadows stretching and shrinking. Let it complete a full circle, passing the scratched slat, the knot in the leg, the coffee stain, until it faces you again. See it settle, perfectly still, every detail sharp, worn edges, dusty bases, faint creaks echoing in your mind. Take a moment to hold this image. Explore it. The warmth of the wood, the imperfections telling its story, the way it sits heavy and real in your imagination. Let the light play across it one last time, catching the grain, the scratches, the tarnished screw. Breathe in the scent of aged oak, hear the softest creak. Then, when you're ready, let the chair gently fade from your mind. Picture the wooden chair again, standing steady in your mind. Focus on the front left leg, the one with the tiny knot in the wood, a circular imperfection near the base, about the size of a pea. Let's zoom in on that knot. Begin at a normal distance, seeing the leg as part of the chair. The wood is a warm brown, smooth to the eye, and the knot stands out, a darker, slightly raised circle, a natural blemish embedded in the grain. The leg itself is straight, grounded, with faint vertical lines of grain running alongside the knot like ripples around a stone in water. Hold that image for a moment, the chair solid, the knot a quiet focal point. Now move closer. Imagine your perspective drifting forward until the knot fills your view, the rest of the leg blurring into the background. At this scale, the knot is more defined, an oval about half an inch wide, its edges slightly irregular, not perfectly round. The wood around it is lighter, a toasted oak shade, while the knot itself is a deeper brown, almost chestnut, with a textured surface that rises a hair above the leg. You can see the grain lines bending around it, warped by the knot's presence, like a river diverted by a rock. There's a subtle sheen from the varnish, but the knot's texture breaks it, rougher, less polished. Zoom in again, closer still. Now the knot is the size of a dinner plate in your mind. The surface reveals tiny cracks radiating from its center, hairline fractures in the wood no wider than a thread, spreading outward like a spider web. The color deepens in patches, swirls of dark brown mix with hints of black, a marbled effect within the knot. The surrounding grain is tighter here, compressed, with micro ridges you could trace with a fingernail. There's a faint shadow where the knot protrudes, and the varnish thins at the edges, exposing raw wood, dry, fibrous, catching light in uneven glints. Let's go deeper. Zoom in until the knot looms like a landscape. At this magnification, the cracks are canyons, each one a jagged crevice cutting through the wood's surface. The texture is rugged. Tiny peaks and valleys form where the knot's fibers twist and overlap. You see individual wood cells now, irregular shapes pressed together, their walls a pale tan against the darker interior. Bits of dust cling to the crevices, microscopic specks of gray, and there's a single splintered fiber jutting out, broken and frayed. The varnish is a glossy film, patchy at this scale, with bubbles frozen in its surface, imperfections invisible to the naked eye. Closer still, enter the microscopic realm. The knot fills your vision entirely, a chaotic terrain of wood fibers. Each cell is a hexagon, its walls thick and porous, stacked like honeycomb, but warped by the knot's growth. Zoom into one cell. Its surface is pitted with tiny holes, channels where sap once flowed, now dry and empty. Filaments of cellulose twist within, thread-like strands curling in a tangled dance. There's a speck of something foreign, perhaps a pollen grain, round and spiky, lodged in a crevice. The colors shift subtly. Golden browns fade to yellows and grays in the cell walls, illuminated by imagined light. The cracks are gaping chasms now, their edges crumbling into dust-like particles. Now push beyond the microscopic. Zoom in to the molecular level. The wood dissolves into a web of molecules, long chains of cellulose, like ropes of interlocking rings, stretching and bending. Each chain is a pattern of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms, vibrating faintly in your mind. Focus on one chain. The atoms form a lattice, carbon a dark core, oxygen a brighter glow, hydrogen tiny flickers orbiting around. The knots and cracks are gone, replaced by this orderly chaos, a sea of bonds linking in hexagonal rings, spiraling into infinity. Zoom further to the atomic level. A single carbon atom dominates your view. It's a sphere pulsing with energy, its nucleus a dense speck surrounded by a cloud of electrons, faint, shimmering smears of probability. The wood, the knot, the chair, all vanish into this primal simplicity. Other atoms drift nearby, oxygen, hydrogen, each a distinct presence, their electron clouds overlapping in faint whispers of bonds. Space stretches between them, vast and empty at this scale, yet alive with motion. Now go beyond even this, into the infinitely small, a realm where the boundaries of matter dissolve. Zoom past the atom, past the electron's blur, into a space that defies measurement, a timeless stillness. Here, in this infinite depth, imagine a presence, God, sovereign and eternal, holding all things together. It's not a form you can see, but a vast, radiant awareness, a light that isn't light, a pulse that isn't motion. The atom, the molecule, the knot, they all rest within this, sustained by an unseen will. Picture it as an endless tapestry, every thread of existence woven by this presence, the chair's every grain and crack a note in its silent song. Feel the sovereignty, not as force, but as a quiet, boundless holding, where even the smallest particle is known and purposed. Rest in this image, the infinitely small, where the divine resides, cradling the universe in its core. Now slowly pull back, let this presence recede, not fading but withdrawing into the fabric of what's next. The carbon atom re-emerges, its electrons swirling, joining others to form the molecular chains. The fibers reform, the cells stack, the knot's rugged landscape takes shape. The cracks and texture return, the leg solidifies, and the chair stands whole once more. Return to where we started, the wooden chair, grounded, with its knot a quiet mark near the base. Take a breath and let the image rest in your mind, solid, detailed, alive, now touched by the infinite.